I look at this debate and this motion today in the context of some dreadful forecasts and some dreadful assessments which have driven government's nervousness. And I want to explore them and put them on the record because I believe it is in the public interest, but I'm doing so, sir, within this motion. And I want to look at one or two in particular, Imperial and Professor Ferguson, who I have a great deal of respect for, and I will be careful how I phrase this. But I am concerned that some of the forecasting we've had has had a track record in, frankly, getting it wrong repeatedly. Professor Ferguson, in 2001, he predicted 150,000 human deaths from foot and mouth. Under 200 died. In 2002, between 50 and 50,000 deaths from BSE. In the end, 177 died. In 2005, 150 million people could be killed from bird flu. 282 died. In 2009, government estimate, based on his advice, a reasonable worst-case scenario for swine flu would lead to 65,000 British deaths. In the end, 457 people died. I'm happy to be corrected on any of those points, but that is the publicly available information. Coming forwards to COVID, he predicted 85,000 deaths in Sweden, which round the Swedes up. In fact, 6,000 Swedes had died at the time. Angus Tegnell, Sweden's chief epidemiologist, said in September 2020, we looked at the imperial model and we could see that the variables that were put were quite extreme. Why did you choose the variables that gave extreme results? I love experts, don't get me wrong, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I know we sometimes have our issues with them, but it is helpful if they are right, if only very occasionally. Johan Gisek, Sweden's former chief epidemiologist, said that Ferguson's models were, quotes, not very good. The Washington Post quoted Gisek as saying that Imperial's forecasts were, quotes, almost hysterical. And this is the forecasting that has been part driving government action. Oncology professor Angus Dalgleish in this country described Ferguson's modelling as lurid predictions. He said that Ferguson and his colleagues were getting it, quotes, spectacularly wrong. And I quote Dalgleish, unfortunately we have a SAGE committee advising a government that is devoid of any scientific expertise on speculative concepts such as the R number, which we now all know is a reproductive rate, etc., and the need for everyone to stay indoors, even though the evidence strongly suggests that people are less likely to catch COVID-19 outside. So some of the scientific evidence may have actually driven the rise in COVID rates in the same way that going into hospital may have actually been the place that you caught COVID and died from it. Viscount Ridley has criticised Ferguson's modelling. Lund University has applied Ferguson's models and found a massive difference between his predictions and what actually happened. Professor Michael Thursfield from Edinburgh said of Ferguson's previous modelling of foot and mouth that it was, quotes, severely flawed. I give way.
Thank him for giving way, and to me he's absolutely right in highlighting the predictions which are wrong. But the unfortunate thing is that politicians then jump onto those and quote them. And the Health Minister in Northern Ireland, for example, on the basis of Mr Ferguson's predictions, talked about deaths of biblical proportions and scared the life out of people.
You make my honourable friend makes the point most eloquently. Politicians then become fearful. What if? What if the worst case scenario is right and they lose faith in more balanced predictions? John Ioannidis from Stanford University said of Ferguson's modelling, major assumptions and estimates that are built into the calculations seem to be substantially inflated. He's a serious customer, Professor Ferguson, and Imperial has an impeccable reputation, and I pay respect overall to their work, and I do not seek to criticise for the sake of it, but to highlight that bad forecasting and bad modelling drives bad government decisions, which then become illiberal and intolerant of other people who have more balanced views. Coming more recently, Mr Deputy Speaker, Ferguson predicted 100,000 cases in July 2021. He said it was almost inevitable. Yet we got nowhere near there. The US forecaster Nate Silver, who's very good at predicting US elections, said, I don't care that the prediction is wrong. I'm sure this stuff is hard to predict. It's that he's consistently so overconfident. The political scientist, Professor Philip Tetlock, also agreed with Nate Silver, adding, I expect even top forecasters make lots of mistakes, but when smart forecasters are consistently overconfident, he said one should start suspecting other factors in play, publicity or policy advocacy games. And I make no such allegations. More recently, I understand that this summer, Professor Ferguson predicted upwards of 100,000 cases. They topped at just over 30,000. And in an interview with The Times, the good professor said that his prediction was off because the football messed up his modelling. And that, for me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, comes to the essence of the problem with forecasting. When you can predict 100 million deaths and nobody dies but somebody gets a sore thumb, you can say the mitigation effects, there were mitigations taken by government. But when you actually have a forecaster whose work then becomes verifiable because he predicts and he gets it wrong, when that forecast comes up to reality kicks in and makes a fool of the forecast and sometimes, sadly, a fool of the forecaster. And every time his forecasts have been verifiable, they have been seen to be very, very badly flawed. And this is a serious man and a serious university. And so forth. Just to sum up, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would say that if we look at the forecasts that have been made about COVID, just like the forecasts for so many other things, reality changes those forecasts and very often undermines their credibility. So we need another set of factors by which to guide us. And the honourable members over there and on this side of the House said we need principles. We need a precautionary principle, but we need a sense of balance so we do not overstep the mark, we do not damage our society, damage our young people, damage the poorer people by seeking to control when actually we need to learn to live with this. So my final question to the Minister, will the government look into forecasting? Maybe an inquiry into the success of forecasting and maybe what we can learn from forecasting, so how to do it less badly in future.